was the influenza epidemic of 1976. 40 dicks, 1 person died, 3 might have had swine flu. They vaccinated 40 million people of political reasons with a vaccine that was not fully tested. 50 million people was vaccinated, between 40 and 50. And all the laboratories reported new outbreaks all the time. All the laboratories didn't have the reagents to test N1, H1. They had 50 deaths, clearly related, and 500 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome. All the bosses at NIH and CDC had to go. That resulted in a very reluctant to do vaccine studies in the US public health. It was left over more or less to the industry to do it. That's one of the reasons we haven't had that push from them. That's why I'm also so happy to see that Norway, a small country in this game, has offered to do what they're doing here with this Center of Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. I think that's a really impressive thing. Norway's reputation in vaccine work has been really good. We haven't really had any disasters in any way. And we had a lot of testing of our own ability, for example, distributing a swine flu vaccine all over the country in a rapid way and getting it done. The efficiency and everything else we jump over. But it was nicely done. I'm also representing the Norwegian Army's medical research field and in the research group, and also in the health of the Norwegian defense. And that's why we are always interested in diseases that relates to man-made naturally and also man-made related. We have this called hybrid war system now, where everything that happens naturally, somebody take the credit, we have done it, in order to get attention or whatever. This type of stuff is increasing all the time now. So naturally, we know that global warming is a human health issue. We'll get different types of outbreaks, a lot of vector-borne cases, and all the insects that is temperature dependent is moving slowly upwards. During the last war in 40 to 45, we had a temperature peak in Finland, about 4 to 5 degrees over normal level. They had 3,000 cases of malaria immediately. So we are on the edge. We had malaria 100 and something years in the outer part of Oslofjorden. It was Vivax, not that really hard, but we had it. So we will get new stuff all the time, and we probably will have needs new vaccines all the time. I think natural disasters or war or anything else that destroys our infrastructure there will be following outbreaks of infectious diseases. And this type of outbreaks, we really can't be prepared for everything that comes. So our ability to react upon new types of diseases and new outbreaks will be quite important. We will have new infectious agents. I think we have got around 42 new infectious agents in humans during the last 38 years. 90-something% came from animals. So there is continuous development in our field of infectious diseases. There's a need for somebody who can quickly establish new vaccines. And I think our organization, organizing this, is one of those who can initiate this type of activities. And naturally, we will always think about intentional release of infectious agents. And the scary stuff is always, will smallpox reappear? And we know there are smallpox around. Somebody talking about making synthetic smallpox out of the gene sequence. Somebody did it just a few years ago on horse pox. They synthesized it and put it into cell cultures. It worked perfectly. But they didn't release it to horses. But they was not allowed to publish it in Science because they didn't think it was really necessary to show that it can be done. The smallpox for humans is about 4 times bigger and will require not terrorists. It has to be some sort of, if it's done by terrorists, it had to be government sponsored. Nobody can do it otherwise. So intentional release is always something we had to think about. So the preparedness. In my world, from US especially, have a clear legal basis for actions and activity, because otherwise you will be sued from here to heaven afterwards. So that's the major. And have a well-trained epidemic surveillance and epidemic intelligence service for early detection of serious infectious diseases, including digital individual tracing. The Epidemic Intelligence Service at the CDC is a tremendous place to be. You go out on everything that people don't understand and try to find out what it is, bring it back to the lab, and do that. And actually, there was one CDC person in Yamabuku during the Ebola in 1976. The impressive thing is none of the scientists being there working got Ebola. They didn't know what they were fighting, but they worked with blood samples, and none of them was contaminated. There's a sentence here, including digital individual tracing. That means if somebody releases something, let's say at the airport in Oslo, in an aerosol machine that's going and there is a virus that really had to find, we can push a few buttons when we're practicing it, and you will get all the telephone numbers to everybody who has been linked up to the telephone post in that area, and you can send them a text message immediately. Please call this number or see the closest doctor with the following messages. So there's a technology today that we can act very, very quickly and collect exactly those who were at the place of exposure. And actually with food, we can use the credit cards and find out who has bought exactly that food, because everything is there in the computers. And the rapid and accurate diagnosis and ample volume of vaccines and equipment for vaccination, it's difficult to have ample volumes of everything of vaccines because that requires too much. We have around 600,000 doses of smallpox vaccines in Norway. And how should we use it and who should have it if something happens? We had to have things clear there. When that rapid and accurate diagnostics, we saw that very clearly during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Studies show that if you can have the Ebola diagnosis within the same day instead of 4 days, the transmission reduced from close to 80% down to 0. And during those outbreaks that I have been in charge of, we have always had about 4 to 5 hours if it's been in the cities. Otherwise, we have been closer up. And that's a major thing when you come to an outbreak of Ebola, have the diagnostic so quickly as possible. The human resources, rapidly deployable, fully vaccinated personnel with appropriate protective gear has to be present. You can't run around looking for it and getting it. And vaccination, that has to be done ahead of schedule, naturally. Prophylactic use of antibiotics could also be evaluated if it's a bacterial thing, and you had to send in personnel if it's really dangerous. The routinely co-exercise between civilian health, police, and army personnel, and not excluding international organizations. We shouldn't sit here in this country and just trying to solve everything else here. There is international groups and facilities and emergency units that can come to assist if something is really big. The response in my military world, it is one command, one coordination center for all activity. I know that will be difficult because there is political groups, there are different types of, we want to own this stuff. We'll see what happens if it does. Best possible surveillance data and communication skills. And I'm very happy to know that the National Institute of Public Health has really tried to be updated on everything and have everything online and very speedy and with good search capacities on clinical symptoms. The prophylactic and post-exposure vaccination of all individuals with possible exposure, those who we send in, has to be vaccinated. The health personnel, well-trained, use of everything, and if they know where the contamination point is, we can send them in to do the job. Isolation of possible cases of serious diseases. Well, actually we're discussing naturally schools or army camps and whatever, but sometimes you really have to keep them there. You can't be allowed to go home to your mom if this is. And naturally, safe discharge of contaminated fecal cases. The Army has a unit, Norwegian Army, Rapidly Deployable Outbreak Investigation Team, Ørjan, which is going to be renewed. One of the more famous individuals are there. He's blanked with his eyes, but he might be recognizable. The Ørjan is civilian experts with military training, infectious disease or tropical medicine. Some of the exercises have been in the middle of Africa, killing a sheep or was it a goat, and we had veterinarians to do it, and eating whatever there was. Clinical microbiology is important, outbreak experiences. Veterinary medicine is important because a lot of the natural diseases come from animals. and the team leader was a military expert. The normal unit will be about 4 to 5 people with an time from alarm to deployment between 24 and 48 hours. The major task, rapid deployment, identify disease or agents, and distinguish between normal occurring outbreak and man-made, if possible. That's a very difficult thing. And this unit has also worked with the United Nations in order to see terrorist activities and how we should differentiate. Have expertise and train for unknown agent. That means having almost direct satellite contact with CDC, NIH, and other institutions. Work with military units in the theater. That means they are not sanitary personnel. They are weaponized. And can assist civilian in operations if necessary. This is my vaccination card. It is not secret, but I'm shot with almost everything that they could find in case we had to go somewhere. And the last picture there is from the epidemic in Mali, where there was 15,000 United Nations soldiers. Either they had to go out and there will be a disaster for the war, or we were able to make some sort of assurance that none of our soldiers were sick. And as an experience. Thank you.